खदीजा, पहला हाफ ऑफ द लेसन आपने कंफर्टेबली लिया है या सिग्नल्स का मसला रहा है?
सर था सिग्नल्स का।
चलें, उसमें टोटली सेपरेट टॉपिक था का, कुछ मैनेज कर पाई हो, समझ पाई हो, या फिर वुड यू वांट मी टू सेंड द रिकॉर्डिंग? आई हैव नो इशू सेंडिंग द रिकॉर्डिंग।
नहीं सर, आ गया था।
चलें, अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह। Good. कौन चले गए बाकी? मैं जल्दी आ गया हूँ शायद। चलें, क्या ख्याल है, ये अगले टॉपिक्स इजी हैं कि मुश्किल हैं? कि वो कोऑर्डिनेशन और वो सारे मुश्किल थे?
सर वो इंटरेस्टिंग थे, ये नहीं है।
अच्छा, वैसे आई डोंट नो, आई मीन आखिरी टॉपिक वैसे काफ़ी इंटरेस्टिंग है। ये बायोडाइवर्सिटी कम से कम उससे नेचुरल सिलेक्शन से तो बेहतर है ना, वो तो बहुत ही बोरिंग था। ये जो अब बाय द वे हम जब जिस पोर्शन पे आ रहे हैं ना, ये इंटरेस्टिंग है। अब मुझे पता है आपका टेस्ट किस तरह का है, आप यू एंजॉय व्हाट सॉर्ट ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन, इंशाल्लाह, सो आई एम श्योर यू विल एंजॉय व्हाट आई एम अबाउट टू एक्सप्लेन। ये किधर रह गए सारे? मेरे ख्याल से मैं ही जल्दी आ गया। चलो, कोई बात नहीं। बाकी क्लासेस ठीक जा रही हैं? मिस सईदा इज टेकिंग 5 क्लासेस पर वीक?
नहीं सर, वीकेंड्स पे लेती हैं।
बस सिर्फ वीकेंड पे छा गई है बस। चलिए, कोई बात नहीं, मिस की खैर है। मिस मिस है भाई, nobody can you know question what Miss Saida does. चलिए जी, शुरू करते हैं जी। Okay, now inshallah the next thing that we are going to look at is known as classification. बिल्कुल बच्चों वाली चीज़ है। अगर आपने बचपन में ब्लॉक्स के साथ खेला होगा तो और आपको मज़ा आता होगा तो you will enjoy doing this topic also. So quickly, when scientists they started studying all of these different organisms, तो उनको एहसास हुआ कि क्लासिफाई नहीं करेंगे तो फिर काफ़ी मुश्किल हो जाएगी। Okay, so this branch was basically born, which is known as taxonomy. And taxonomy basically means it's basically a way of classification, a way of natural classification, if you like. Natural classification. Okay, so natural way of classification. What is the basis on which this classification is done? It's basically based on the classification is based on evolutionary relationships, based on evolutionary relationships. ठीक है जी. Okay. Now, the big classification is known as the domains. I'm going to give you a bird's eye view first. Okay. So the bird you in the system of classification, the first thing that we are going to talk about is about domains. ठीक है, यानी कि आप समझे, this is the big umbrella, domains, and there are three domains that we are going to talk about. So the three domains are the following. Number one, you have the domain known as the bacterial domain. ठीक है, bacteria. Number two is archaea. I'm sure you haven't heard of this name before. And then the third one is eukarya. Bacteria is basically prokaryote. Okay, you know this already. It's prokaryote. Let me tell you the history. Basically, hua kya tha? Initially the classification, as you already know, was based upon simple prokaryotic and eukaryotic distribution. Okay, bacterial cell, वो सारे differences हम detail में देखेंगे आज. लेकिन there was some bacteria that actually stood out. Okay, from normal archaea. उनकी डिटेल में मैं आता हूँ, लेकिन मैं आपको bigger picture I think पहले दे दूँ, because otherwise I will need to go into details which I don't want to initially. So out of all of these three domains, the eukarya is then further divided into 4 kingdoms. Okay, it's divided into 4 kingdoms, and those 4 kingdoms are the following. Number 1, the first kingdom is the none other than kingdom Animalia. And then you have kingdom Plantae, and then you have, please apna mic agar aap mute kar lein, thank you. And then you have fungi, and then finally you have Protoctista. Time kitna ho gaya? 7:43. Okay, let's see how much we were able to do this today. Inshallah. Okay, so this is basically the classification. और फिर एक चीज है जिसकी totally एक अलग classification की हुई है, and they are the viruses. The viruses are not at all included in any of these classifications, and again there is a reason why that's the case. Now this is the bird's eye view. हमने करना क्या है? We need to know the features of bacteria, archaea, eukarya, and then 4 kingdoms of eukarya, the individual features of Animalia, Plantae, fungi, and Protoctista. So this is all of this is AO1 that we need to know. But of course, that's important. We can't underestimate. And then finally, we have viruses. Okay. So hum shuru karenge. I will begin with, of course, I will give you some pictures. I will try to stick to the pictures of your textbook. We will begin with the idea of ye archaea ki story kahan se shuru hui. Bacteria, as we know, they're living cells, and they will have enzymes which have optimum temperatures. And you know this fact that if we are going beyond the optimum temperature, what that means is that we are causing denaturation of enzymes. Lekin there were some bacteria that were really, resistant against very harsh environmental conditions, especially temperature. मैं आपको एक picture दिखाता हूँ. It's from your own textbook, and this picture is basically the picture of a typical setup in the sea. So it's a deep, it's a deep sea hydrothermal vent, a black smoker. आप देख रहे हैं ये धुआं निकल रहा है, surrounded by giant tube worms. Okay. The community relies on energy made available by bacteria and archaeans. You can't see bacteria and archaeans here, but this thing, which is known as a hydrothermal vent, is deep down inside the oceans, the rivers, and it's a hub of these quote unquote bacterias, which are actually not bacteria. Majority of them are bacteria. Some of them are archaeans also. Archaeans kya hai? They are bacteria, but they are what is known as extremophiles. Extremophiles is a word which means that they can survive at high temperatures. Okay? High temperatures. Or there are 3 primary differences between archaea and bacteria. Let me give them first, and then inshallah I will go into details. अभी मैं individually bacteria और archaea को नहीं पकड़ रहा. I'm initially dealing with the main differences between bacteria and archaea, because initially the division was based upon prokaryotes and eukaryotes. तो ये bacteria में से ही stem out किया archaea. So let's look at the main differences between archaea and bacteria. So there are differences in terms of 3 things. The And inshallah, I will just go into details of these differences. The first difference is the difference between the membrane lipids. Now, I hope you understand that membrane lipids ka jo basic unit hai, that's a phospholipid molecule. I will just explain how that differs. Then number two, the ribosomal RNA of archaea and bacteria, it differs. And then the cell wall composition, it differs. Now, what exact detail do we need to know for these differences? I have compiled some bullet points that you need to know. असल में एक बात जहन में रखें, ये जो हम कर रहे हैं ना ये वाला टॉपिक, इसमें again it's a lot of information that unfortunately you will have to memorize and cram in your head. So I will try my best to do as much as spoon feeding as I can. इस तरह bullet points में मैं कम ही दूंगा. I will try to give them in diagrammatic and web diagram format so that it's easier for you to remember, the usually way I do. But there are some points that I have to resort to this. So now what we're going to do is, again, आज हम इस सारी classification में our point of focus is the differences between bacteria and archaea. And let's look at one by one all of these differences. तो मैंने आपको बताया था that the differences are in terms of three things: the membrane lipids, the ribosomal RNA, and the composition of the cell walls. So let's first talk about the membrane lipids. If you look at the first bullet point, it says the membrane lipids found in the cells of archaea organisms are completely unique. They are not found in bacterial or eukaryotic cells. The main point है वो basically ये है. The membrane lipids of archaea consist of branched hydrocarbon chains bonded to glycerol by ether linkages. ठीक है? और the membrane lipids of bacteria consist of unbranched. In दोनों में जो difference है वो basically ये है. Bacteria have unbranched and their linkages are ester linkages. I hope you know the difference between ether and ester linkages. This is basic chemistry. Of course, you don't need to go into details of that. But I mean, these are the 2 points that you really have to understand. So that's one of the ways in which bacteria were no more called bacteria, but they were classed into a separate domain, and that is the archaea. Okay. Acha, uske baad, the second thing which caused the separation of bacteria into archaea or a separate category was ribosomal RNA. Both archaea and bacteria, ye aapko pata hai ASA that both possess 70S ribosomes. Okay, 70S, excuse me, is the smaller of the two ribosomes. The 70S ribosomes in archaea possesses a smaller subunit that is more similar to the subunit found in eukaryotes. I want you to pay attention and read this again. देखिए, अगर मैं आपके सामने draw करूं, आपको पता है कि ribosome is actually composed of a smaller subunit, okay, and then a larger subunit. Don't confuse both of these as 70 and 80S. No, this entire thing is maybe a 70S. Or isse jo bada hoga, for example, something like this, maybe that is 80S. Okay, so the point is, individual either 70 or 80S, they will have smaller or larger subunits. Now, the difference that we're trying to understand is the 70S ribosomes that archaea possess, unka jo smaller subunit hai, ye wala jisko main shade kar raha hu green, it says that the smaller subunit is more similar to the subunit found in eukaryote ribosomes. यानी कि 80S वाले के smaller subunit से वो काफी resemble कर रहा है. Okay, the base sequence of ribosomal RNA in archaea show more similarity to the RNA of eukarya than bacteria. And the primary structure of ribosome proteins in archaea show more similarity to the ribosomes of eukarya than bacteria. Yani ke, in term, I mean, if all of this is getting too much, then take this as a very simple summary. The archaea, since it is very close to bacteria, तो उसके ribosomes और उसके ribosomal RNA, they should be very close in chemical composition to bacteria. But apparently they happen to be closer than eukaryotes instead of the bacteria themselves. That's why there was a need to give them a separate categorization, which is archaea. And then the third is the composition of the cell walls. Composition of the cell walls, organism from bacteria, you know that they have peptidoglycan, okay? आर्किया के पास जो सेल वॉल है वो पेप्टिडोग्लाइकिन की नहीं होती. It does not contain peptidoglycan. There are different things that it is composed of. Of course, the detail of फिलहाल अभी आर्किया को देखेंगे तो मैं आपको डिटेल में बताऊंगा. But inshallah, these are the three differences that I want you to remember. Okay. All right. Coming back to the bigger umbrella picture. Now, when we are talking about classification, classification is basically is arranged in a hierarchy. मैंने आपको बताया initially कि taxonomy is the way of natural classification. Okay. Now, if I were to jot down or put that classification into an hierarchical fashion, so it would go something like the following. Okay. सबसे ऊपर आता है जी domain. ठीक है. डोमेन के बाद आता है किंगडम. किंगडम के बाद आता है फाइलम. फाइलम के बाद आता है क्लास. किंगडम, फाइलम, क्लास, ऑर्डर, फैमिली, जीनस, स्पीशीज. ओके, मैंने कॉलेज डेज का रट्टा लगाया हुआ, मुझे अभी भी याद है. किंगडम, फाइलम, क्लास, ऑर्डर, देन यू हैव फैमिली, देन यू हैव जीनस, एंड देन यू हैव स्पीशीज. प्लीज मेरे से एक क्वेश्चन पूछें कि क्या आपको ये सीक्वेंस याद रखना पड़ेगा? कम ऑन, प्लीज आस्क मी दिस क्वेश्चन. I'm serious. Ask me this question because I want to answer it then. Say, please ask this. Come on, say, ask me, sir. क्या ये हमें याद करना पड़ेगा? Come on,
क्या ये याद करना पड़ेगा?
Yes, the answer is yes. ये आपको याद करना पड़ेगा. तो अब मुसीबत ये है, ये हम कैसे याद रखें? There are different mnemonics that have been made. जिसको याद कर सकते हैं. मैं देख रहा था नेट पे एक बड़ा अच्छा mnemonic दिया हुआ था. मुझे अब याद नहीं आ रहा वो क्या था. आई थिंक किंग्स प्ले चेस ओवर समथिंग लाइक दिस. मैं आपको देख के बता दूंगा, मेरे ज़हन से इस वक्त निकल रहा है. बट देयर इज अ mnemonic that inshallah when you will remember that, it will be easy for you to remember. So I mean, what does this mean? You need to understand. This basically means, आप देखें नीचे से शुरू करें फिर मैं आपको समझाता हूँ. Species, everybody know what species is, okay? So at the base of the hierarchy you have the species. फिर जो similar species होते हैं, they are grouped into genus, and then similar genus are grouped into family, and then similar families are grouped into orders, then similar orders are grouped into classes, and then similar classes are grouped into phylums, similar phylums are grouped into kingdoms, and then similar kingdoms are grouped into domains. This is basically how it works. इसकी इंशाल्लाह डिटेल मैं आपको दे दूंगा, लेकिन अभी फिलहाल आज के लिए what I want you to understand is that this is basically the hierarchy, if you like, of taxonomy, जिसमें हम classification करते हैं. Okay, now inshallah the next thing that we are going to look at is, हमारे पास थोड़ा सा टाइम है तो I think let's dive into, एक second, let me, मैं आपको ना असल में इसके questions भी दिखाना चाह रहा हूँ कि किस तरह के आते हैं. Right. Okay, let me go to the specification and let's see what we've done so far. Okay. अच्छा जी, जरा 18.1 देखें बच्चों. Alhamdulillah, we are done with 18.1. We have defined the terms species, ecosystem, and niche. We have explained biodiversity at 3 different levels: at habitat level, at number of species and diversity, and at genetic level. We have explained the importance of random sampling in determining biodiversity. Random sampling, systematic sampling, और ये हमने डिटेल में कल देखा था. Use suitable methods such as frame quadrates, line transects, belt transects, mark, release, recapture to assess distribution and abundance of organisms in a local area. And then today we have seen E in detail, और हमने शुरू में इस टॉपिक में Simpson's Index of Biodiversity भी देख लिया था. So that alhamdulillah finishes 18.1. Now, I mean, apparently it looks like we've only covered a very small portion of this topic, but what now we're left with is actually very simple. So let's look at these points of specification for classification. Describe the classification of species into taxonomical hierarchy of domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. ये एक दो दफा बोलेंगे ना याद हो जाएगा. Trust me, this is the worst thing that you have to remember in A levels. Honestly, if I were to give a gold medal to something that is the most worst that the students need to remember, then that is this thing. अच्छा जी, उसके बाद सिंपली वो कह रहा है आउटलाइन कैरेक्टरिस्टिक फीचर्स ऑफ द थ्री डोमेन्स. इंशाल्लाह इसको हम डिटेल में देखेंगे. मार्क स्कीम जिंदाबाद. C, outline the characteristic features of kingdom Protoctista, fungi, plantae, and Animalia. Please remember that all of these four kingdoms are stemming out from Eukarya. Okay, and then explain why viruses are not included in the three domain. क्यों इनकी वक्री मस्जिद है. ये वक्री मस्जिद भी हम कल देखेंगे. जिस तरह आप सुनते होंगे अपनी अम्मियों से घर में, जब आप जो चीज़ बनी होती है वो खाते नहीं और फिर वो कहती हैं कि तेरी वक्री मस्जिद है. ठीक है, so viruses, they also have a वक्री मस्जिद. Inshallah, we will see to that. So I'm stopping here today. I think I won't jump into this. एक ही दफा इसको हम कल देखेंगे. Let's see if we're able to finish this entire topic tomorrow, including classification. And that is really, honestly, not something very difficult. Zoos, क्यों बनते हैं, what are botanical gardens? Again, boring stuff as some of you might think. This is less boring than natural selection, by the way. I hope you would agree. चलें जी, अच्छा ग्रुप में देख लें ज़रा. मैंने आपको सेंड कर दिए हैं ये सारे. I think रिसीव हो गए हैं. हाँ जी, ये मैंने ग्रुप में पिछले नेचुरल सिलेक्शन वाले टॉपिक के सारे क्लास नोट्स ऑर्डर में उनको लेबल किया हुआ है 1 से लेके 10 तक. ठीक है, और इंशाल्लाह मैं आज रात को आपको अभी तक जितना मैंने हमारे इस टॉपिक का किया वो भी मैं आपको सेंड कर दूंगा. ओके बच्चों, डू वी हैव एनी क्वेश्चंस फॉर टुडे? आई होप एवरीथिंग दैट आई डिड वाज क्लियर एंड यू अंडरस्टूड. फरियाल, खतीजा एंड राबिया. चलें जी, अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह. चलें जी, नहीं जी बच्चों, अपना ख्याल रखें. मैं 1-2 मिनट पहले असल में इसलिए छोड़ देता हूँ क्योंकि बैक टू बैक क्लासेस के बीच में ज़रा 1-2 मिनट सांस लेना बहुत ज़रूरी होता है. सो आई रियली होप यू अंडरस्टैंड एंड अप्रिशिएट. बारकल्लाहु फीकुम बच्चों. सी यू टुमारो सेम टाइम. अपना बहुत ख्याल रखें. अस्सलाम वालेकुम व रहमतुल्लाह.